How's it going?
Fantastic. Great to see you, Roy. How you been?
Good. Great to have you on the podcast. Let me start just giving a quick bio. We have Mike Eckhoff today. Mike Eckhoff is an extremely customer-centric revenue leader. We've worked together back at HP, spent some time on the road together. Mike has extensive experience in emerging software technologies, all the way from startups to large enterprises. Mike developed really innovative growth strategies, including value selling strategies for teams he took on as a CRO, and led both sales and customer success as CROs for mostly AI, for Armory, for Tricentis. Held senior leadership roles at Eggplant, HP Software, and Mercury Interactive, which are the businesses we collaborated on. So great to have you, Mike, and looking forward.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, good to see you. First of all, maybe we start with just a quick. I always like to get different angles on the term. Everybody's talking about value selling, all the way from qualification to understanding, quantifying value. But what does value selling mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that many people just do naturally, right? When you're value selling, I think about it as focusing on what the real problem is. And are you solving that problem? And what's the value of solving that problem for the customer or the company that you're working with? And I think it often gets misconstrued into ROI, and the two are not the same. ROI can certainly be a component of value, but it's most definitely not the only component. And obviously, we've had some experience with shared companies and using ROI and trying to represent that as value selling. But for me, it goes much beyond that into your sales approach, how you interact with customers, and ultimately, how are you delivering on the solutions that you're offering?
Right, and there's a lot to say about understanding where the strategic problem is that you're going to solve, and how do you tie it all the way to strategic objectives of the enterprise, right? So, where does that come into the value selling approach?
Yeah, one of the earliest trainings I had in my sales career, I'm going to try to remember if I can remember the right acronyms. It was basically a need to value pyramid. And the idea being that if you start with kind of what the basic problem is, and then you just ask some basic questions and sit back and shut up, right? The customer will tell you what problems they're trying to solve, what the business impact is of that problem, and ultimately what value is it derived. Now, the way that you use that in a sales environment is by linking those values statements back to corporate initiatives. So if I can tear open a 10K report, or find public information, or even just information about a company, and I can understand at the top level, what does the CEO care about? What do the shareholders care about? If the solution that I'm selling can be tied back to those top level corporate initiatives, because I understand the tactical problem that they're trying to solve, but more importantly, how that tactical problem impacts their business, then I can identify value, and then I can typically very quickly link to budget. And that's the biggest challenge, right? We all have a lot of solutions that we're selling, and many of those solutions are viewed as nice to haves. And how do you make that nice to have a critical need? You link it back to a corporate objective.
And then you win the priority battle, basically.
Exactly.
100%. Amazing. So when you look at a deal as a leader, and if you're trying to inspect a deal with that in mind, what are the things that you're looking for? What's your playbook of inspecting a deal?
I've had many people ask me what the best sales methodology is. And I said, there's a simple answer. There's only one sales methodology that's ever been created that actually works. And it's the one that you use regularly. I don't care what methodology you have. I don't care what approach you have. I don't care if you're using Sandler or Medic, MedPick, customer centric, take your pick. It doesn't matter. They all basically do the same thing. The biggest problem is, as sales leaders, we suck at actually enforcing them and managing to them. And it's incredibly difficult to force someone to follow a methodology, especially when that methodology isn't natural. When it requires a sales rep to do extra work, guess what? We're sales reps. We're going to find ways around it. We're going to pre-populate the answers before we ever talk to the customer. And so I see so many early sales managers in their career trying to drive the methodology to force the process. And they make it so hard that reps just avoid it. And then it falls apart and they don't work. So to me, what's important is making it easy for the rep. The rep has to see value in the methodology. They don't see value in it, they're not going to use it.
You said the key thing, which is it's not about building or choosing the framework, it's operationalizing it. Is how do you, it's really, are you all in internalizing what you're trying to find, what you're trying to get to in the deal? Let's take a tour back in time, because I remember, so when I was back at HP Software, Tricentis was a partner. And back in the ALM, BPT, happy times. At some point, we saw Tricentis sort of stop at a certain size, and then you joined, and it basically took off. And it was pretty clear there was a transformation on the go-to-market side, because the product advanced, but the change was a much more aggressive and precise go-to-market. And we saw that coming from HP, looking at the entire market, but we saw this player suddenly take off. I'd love to take back sort of a view to understand what were the changes as you came in. Let's start just at the first few months. How did you look at the first 90 days of this team?
Yeah, there's a few things that really I would say were significant. One, Tricentis, as you know, but others may not, is a company based out of Vienna, Austria. And when I joined, they had their history as a services company, hence their early days supporting the Mercury product and HP product, and delivering quality-based solutions, but not really building a product. And the founders, brilliant founder on the product side, figured out that the biggest challenge people had in testing was that scripting and creating the scripts and maintaining the scripts. And so he created a different approach. And as a good DACH region German-speaking engineer, he built an incredibly powerful engine that didn't really have the appeal or the look and feel of a typical US-based product. And so one of the first things we did was we sat down and we talked to the customers primarily in Europe that they had sold. And we understand what worked and what they struggled with. And at that time, they were trying to build out the product. And so they were very focused on HP. We were the clear de facto standard in many parts of the industry. And so they were very focused on competing against HP. In fact, you weren't allowed to use an HP laptop. Of course, you couldn't use a Mac at the time either, but it had to be like a Dell machine. Everything was about HP. And I think one of the first mindset changes that I helped to implement was the fact that HP wasn't our competitor. We were doing something new. And as a great leader that Christopher Lochhead talks about, we were creating a new category within quality engineering. And when we changed that mindset and stopped trying to look like everybody else and actually embrace the different that we had, we saw some early success. But there also had been so many years of companies who tried to implement software test automation and failed, that there was a lot of skepticism in the industry. And so in talking about value, we went from the big HP days of a value management office and mandatory ROI models to focusing much more on what the real impact was to the business user as opposed to the tester. The tester didn't really care what tool they were using. The business user cared about, does my application perform? Do my updates get put out in a timely manner? And we could actually impact that. And we had proof points to show that. And so that was really the mindset change that, took us about, almost a year, but that's where we really started seeing explosive growth, was just changing the internal mindset and how we represented the platform to the prospects.
So you basically transitioned from your main user to a different persona where you could prove value more efficiently to the organization.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about the team? What kind of changes did you do operationally in the team when you came in?
Yeah. So first off, I didn't do much with the European team. As good Europeans, they all made their quota and then took the rest of the year off. The number one sales rep in the history of the company, his best year ever at the time was 107% of plan. Their compensation plan wasn't really designed to incent overperformance. In fact, if you overperformed too much, you got less money. And so we did change the compensation plan, although changing the plan alone didn't make any difference in the first year performance for the European team. It's when the American team really started kicking off and came in, the top two reps, and we had three the first year, with the top two reps, each hit about 350% of their annual plan. And they made a lot of money. And they were very vocal, as most Americans are, and pretty excited to share that with everybody. The next year, that rep who his best year was 107% wound up hitting over 170. So he always had the ability to do it, just never the reason or the mindset that he could. So, we changed the team dynamic away from a very heavy technical sales rep into much more of a business focused and knowledgeable rep. In fact, one of the two reps who hit over 300% of plan that first year had never sold testing products before in his life. Mm-hmm. So it was brand new to him, but he understood business.
Tell me a little bit about the growth. As you started hitting that fast growth, what kind of operational changes did you do in the team to scale that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One, it was all about building a sustainable model. And so what we really focused on was same reps staying aligned with certain key accounts. And as you know, when you're growing and you're adding reps, especially when you're growing, 300% per year, which we did the first couple of years, you have to add more reps. But the key account relationships we maintained. And so, the large bank that somebody sold a $38,000 deal to the first year, they sold three $200,000 deals to the second year. And the third year, they did a $10 million transaction. The other rep who had a large oil and gas company did a $300,000 deal and then a $6 million deal. So it's about maintaining that consistency while you're still expanding. And it does mean a little more cost. Obviously, travel, they had to travel a little more. They weren't necessarily in their backyard. But that early growth is really what founded the company and why they achieved the level of success they have today. We also developed a lot of internal customer champions. And we had customers who would host events at their offices where we would bring prospects in and they would tell them about how successful they were. When you can build that customer success model where your customers are selling for you, it gets a little easier.
So let's talk a little bit about that customer champion. So given the change in persona, did you also change the definition of who your champion is in the account?
So to a degree, a couple of things. One, we found that the testing team typically wasn't excited to talk to us, right? They had their tools in place. They'd been using the same tools for years. They were a cost center. They were not well liked. And that many of them now were really trying to learn coding so they could become developers. By engaging the product owner or the business user, they weren't the buyer, but they became the internal sponsor to get us to more of the development team. And our story to the development team was, we can accelerate your rate of delivery, ensure fewer defects, and give you more value, and still work with the testing team, but get them engaged much earlier in the process. And we also had some good timing in that agile development was becoming kind of the standard. And we were seeing more Scrum teams and more cross-functional teams. And we took advantage of that. We tapped into that trend very aggressively. And so what we found was the people who ultimately became our champions were the ones who were either leading development or leading that agile transformation, because they could then show, hey, this tool helps us develop faster at better quality.
So let's look at the harder problems a little bit. So when you look back, one of the things I like to do is to figure out what would you do different, right? What actually didn't work, even though this was an amazing successful run there. What didn't work that you took with you to the next places you went to and said, this is how I'm going to treat this aspect differently?
Yeah. A lot of things. We probably did more things wrong than we did right, but we also failed fast. And we tried things, we experimented, and we changed quickly when something wasn't working. I'll give you the example of the Americas team. So when we first hired the first sales reps in the US, we hired 3 people. One person I'd known for years, had a great background in quality engineering, had been with HP, worked with very strategic accounts. He was very successful. As we expected, he did great and was one of those reps that, at some point got his Rolex for being the rep of the year. Another rep was more of a relationship guy. He had very strategic relationships with one key account that the deal was just needed to be signed. He did everything we asked him to do. He got the massive MLA signed. We got the big contract done. Never actually booked a single dollar of business against the contract. And so we recognized that style at this phase was not the right approach. And then the third person that we hired, he had never sold quality before, never sold testing before, but had an amazing internal process. And we said, follow your process, do what you need to do. We can teach you the technology. And he was incredibly successful. A lot of it comes down to understanding how you manage that process and getting visibility into the process. So that relationship seller who's off taking people to lunch and doing all the right things to build a big relationship in an early stage just isn't valuable. So we transitioned away from that very quickly. We kept the playbook very dynamic. We didn't have hard and fast rules. We had clearly defined stages, but we changed the whole process around how you do a proof of concept or proof of value. And we actually forced the change from proof of concept to proof of value. Because what I found was, the team was very proud that they won 86% of their POVs. But I dug a little bit deeper and found out that the average sale price of those 86% was under 20K. And so they were spending more money on the POV, on the proof of concept, than they were getting in the deal. But they were also charging for that proof of concept in every case. And if the customer wasn't willing or able to pay, they'd walk away. We changed that dramatically. And we focused on what value are you deriving as opposed to, does this work? We could prove the concept. We had referrals. That was not the problem. And that change to a proof of value that was based on the company's willingness to make a purchase commitment fundamentally transformed it. We had a much lower success rate, but we had significantly higher number of won deals and exponentially more revenue coming out of it.
So going back to your relationship guy versus your process guy, how do you, when you see a relationship guy today in an early stage company or maybe growth phase company, but not an extremely established brand, how do you coach them? What do you do when you inspect a deal and you're seeing that most of the input or feedback from the rep is confidence in the relationship, opinion, and sort of gut feelings that it's going forward? How do you transition this to a deal that's getting inspected on progress, on actual qualification progress that's been done versus the relationship?
Well, obviously that's one of the things in the world that you're changing dramatically with Spotlight AI. In the old days, the way we did it was I had to get on a plane and go out there and meet them myself. Because until I heard the customer say it, I didn't have confidence or faith that the person was really telling me the truth. And, they always have good stories and they have great confidence, but delay after delay. And so now the ability to record a conversation, have an AI that actually recognizes what's being said, understands when somebody's talking about a value driver, what that means, when they talk about, a decision maker or what metrics they're using to manage it. That's game changing. And it gives you the ability to, I think back to the old challenger sale model, right? There are, I think 17% of people are natural challengers. But by giving those tools, you can coach someone in the very early stages of a deal on what are the right questions to ask, and then how do you pull the information out of what's being said to make a decision if this is really a deal or not. And the one rep that I talked about, the process guy, I've stolen one of his favorite quotes, which is, "I don't qualify deals, I disqualify deals," because he's looking for reasons to not work with that customer. And if you can't find any reasons not to work with them, then it's probably a pretty good chance you're going to get a deal out of it.
Don't be complacent, right? Always look for where the risk is. 100%. And that is the mindset of going from happy ears to looking for the risks and being actionable about them. Mike, first of all, I'm extremely happy that you've joined us as an advisory, giving me tons of feedback on what we're building, and I'm grateful for that. And I mean, we've known each other for over 20 years now, and I've seen the companies you've grown. So amazing journey. Thank you so much. This has been great.
I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be a part of this company. I'm thrilled about the future, the potential. There's not many technologies around that I look at and see that it's really changing the nature of how I run my business and how I do my job. But this is something that is absolutely incredible. So I'm excited for all things to come.
All right. Well, good times ahead. Thanks, Mike. Great talking.
All right. Take care.